All right. Thank you for waiting there for just a moment. We're really excited to see you today. Thank you. If you were here yesterday, welcome back, and if you weren't, welcome. We like all of you, regardless if you were here yesterday or today. So let me just say a quick word, and then I will introduce my colleague. My name is Timothy Shaffer. I'm the director of the SNF Ithaca Initiative here at the university, and the Stavros Niarchos Foundation Chair of Civil Discourse, which means I get to do things like this, and some students in our class called Citizen, Civility, and Change, and other opportunities here on campus. So if you're not familiar with the SNF Ithaca Initiative, I would encourage you to check it out. But I'm really excited to be sitting on the stage here with my colleague Anna-Kynthia Bousdoukou from iMEdD, and I would love to have her introduce herself a little bit and speak about iMEdD for just a moment. We're going to help frame today, set up the sessions. This is going to be a very full day. So we hope that you are able to attend some of the other sessions throughout the morning and the afternoon, even into the evening, because in so many ways the themes of this convening of this summit are rooted in this kind of core idea of media, its role in democracy, but also recognizing that it's really challenged. And if you were here yesterday, you heard some of this. So I'll say a little bit more about that in just a moment, but let me turn it over to my friend and colleague, Anna-Kynthia Bousdoukou.
Thank you very much, Tim. Good morning to everyone. I'm so happy being here again. Of course, through the summit, the second summit. The first took place last year. I'm happy being here for the second day. It's full day today, talking about media and democracy. And I'm very happy, me personally, being here because I can see some familiar faces from the class that I had the pleasure and honor to join last fall as a senior fellow of SNF Ithaca, talking about media and democracy in a more practical way. And I think that this is what we're missing today. This is what I also mentioned yesterday. We are missing the useful meaning into our lives of journalism, which means that the quality of the information we receive, actually nothing has to do with our lives. And even if has to do basically with the interest that we have, and now I'm referring to the social media platforms. So there is a huge confusion here, and if you remember, our first meeting was about where is the line between social media and media, because there is no reason for any kind of fight between media and social media. I strongly believe that since the very early of all these platforms. Social media is a very successful industry. What about media? Which is not, for sure, and it's not sustainable industry. So I think that all these fine lines can make us understand better and deeper the way that we as users can use the access that we have and the way we express ourselves through social media platforms. On the other side, we have to understand that this is not journalism. But we have, as journalists, to admit and to imagine and find ways that we could use social media to promote and to launch, to release journalistic content in the way that Carmela and Enrique, for instance, shared with us yesterday during the first session. So I think that for different reasons, sometimes for reasons that they can be completed from, journalism, for instance, a journalist can get very important information through social media. But then our work as journalists being in something different, to get back to the story, to investigate and get back to you with whatever we found, but also with regards to the process that we followed. This is transparency. And then we can talk again about trust, about the meaningful perspective of what do we call, what is truth, what do we need to share. And I see my colleague Dimitris Bounias, who will share with us more later during the day about our initiative, iMEdD, and we were discussing, and he was telling me yesterday that he will refer to that point. Yes, it's very important to find the truth, but it is most important to know what to do with that.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the important things is, and I alluded to this a moment ago, the theme for this summit is this idea of thriving in a toxic media environment. Yesterday, as Anna was mentioning, we heard from 2 journalists who are utilizing TikTok particularly and kind of vertical video. Some of you were in that session, and we had a workshop, so people learning how to literally write scripts of how to utilize technology. The first session we'll have immediately after we step off the stage will be exploring this theme of how do we use technology and platforms to help facilitate interactions and conversations with one another. And also this, and Anna was mentioning, she was a senior fellow last semester, the course on media, disinformation, and democracy. We will be engaging also a little bit later this morning the idea of misinformation and how do we think about this through an ethical lens. The reality is we have a lot of opportunities through things like social media and technology, and at the same time there are some real limitations. There are some real factors that we need to be thinking about. So I want to just highlight, and you can see behind us, the sort of run of the day of what we'll be engaging in conversation with wonderful groups of speakers. We'll have some panels, some presentations from some of our colleagues who will help walk through, I think, opportunities for thinking about these questions, and especially if you are studying communication or journalism, this might make a lot of sense to you. You're like, yes, this is maybe a path I want to go down, and if you're not, you might be saying, wait, why is this relevant for me? Where does this come into play? I think something you said, Anna, last semester has stuck with me is that you're not necessarily training to become a journalist, but we're also thinking about how do we think more like journalists? How do we investigate? How do we ask questions? As we heard last night from Ested Herndon and Domenico Montanaro, it's maybe not the sense of objectivity in a totally dispassionate position, but how do we ensure that we are accurately capturing, reflecting, communicating the information that is authentic and true? And so today we will have an opportunity to kind of delve into some of those questions. We'll take a break in the middle of the day, but really exploring in the afternoon this question about local news. And we have a couple wonderful panels, some scholars who will be speaking about some of this. They've done phenomenal research in this world around print journalism, as we might think about it, or kind of local news in that way. Television. And again, as I'm looking at the audience, some of you might say, like, print news. I don't think about print news. Or where do I get something that is printed, right? These sorts of things. We have to navigate, right?
Print news costs a lot.
It costs a lot of money, which is very challenging. And we've even had this conversation here on this campus.
Nobody wants to pay.
No, well, and it's one of the things that we have to, how do we make any of this work? How do we sustain these systems? And so one of the wonderful things is after that conversation, we'll have an example of a number of individuals from both here locally in Delaware who are transforming and challenging some of these things, the systems as they've been to become something else that's more sustainable, but also at other parts of the country and around the world, frankly, as we think about these issues. And towards the later part of the afternoon, how do we capture and document this? So we have a couple documentarians who will be joining us. We'll have a conversation around how do we sustain journalism. This is a big issue right now. If you're a policy student, for example, these are the questions that are going on in Washington right now. How do we fund things like NPR and PBS? What are the ramifications for communities depending on where you're from? Small, big towns. If you're from a small rural place, it's not very efficient economically to have these systems. So how do we sustain these realities? And then we'll wrap up the day with conversations around the rise of things like podcasts. So some folks from Media Matters will be joining us and speaking about that work, phenomenal research that they've done. And in fact, we will have kind of a keynote address at 6:30 with 2 individuals who are quite prominent, disparate political views, so it will be an embodiment, I hope. I don't have any wood to knock on, but I'm going to hope it's going to be nice civil discourse around the issues of how do we speak about freely the things that we are passionate about and think about. So Tara Palmieri and David Rubin will be joining us as part of that keynote. So this is the sort of the run of the day, but in so many ways we have these sort of big themes that kind of weave through the conversations yesterday and really today. How do we think about issues of misinformation and this idea of literacy? How do we know? How do we also engage people, meet them where they are? Some of the examples we hear about folks using WhatsApp to engage the Latino community here in Delaware. Phenomenal example, and I said to them just the other day, I was like, I didn't know about that. And the reporter said, well, you're not the target audience. I am not. I am not part of the Latino community. And unsurprisingly, right, I'm not the one that they're engaging in a very important way. But this idea of local journalism, local infrastructure that enables some of this to happen is so critical and so important. And then fundamentally behind all of this is this idea of media as a public good. What does that mean? Our initiative is part of the Biden School here at the university, and we speak about this idea of public good as it relates to public service and public management, these sorts of ideas. But for us, it's also related to this media ecosystem. So back to that big theme. How do we thrive in an environment that is not, in so many ways, set up to enable or kind of reinforce those best things, and operates, frankly, more sometimes in this more economic model of what gets people engaged? What is the sort of clickbait? What's maybe the provocative thing, but not necessarily the ideal thing?
May I ask if anyone here is studying journalism? Okay, that's good.
We got some more over there too.
Yeah, I saw them.
You can raise those hands proud.
I saw them. Could you please get back to the previous slide?
Yeah, please.
Because I just noticed the title of the last session, which is like free speech and big ideas, and you mentioned the need of being free to speak. But is it a bad idea, the free speech today? There is no reason to respond on that. But of course, we notice what's going on to the current environment, and I'm not mentioning only here in the United States, because in Europe it's not easier to really have an open and free dialogue. It's not easy for journalists to do their work, but it's not easy even for all of us to hear anything without arguments, because basically this is what we're missing. We have just voices, which is like noise, instead of something useful, as I said, to our lives, and that's why we need the arguments and the facts. But for having these facts, somebody has to do their work. And journalism, this is something that I also mention very often, is not like activism, and it's not like everything for profit. It's the pillar of democracy. So somehow we have to figure out how this will work. And since you also mentioned the very big debate around objectivity and how objective or subjective should be a journalist, and if they finally are, etc., I will remind to all of us what Marina Walker mentioned last year here when she joined the Media and Democracy First Summit in Delaware. Marina Walker, I hope everybody knows. If not, we really have to search about her, because she's a Pulitzer Award winning journalist, and she's leading as an executive editor the Pulitzer Center. So Marina said that it's not about being, the discussion hasn't nothing to do with how or if the journalist is objective or subjective, but how to be fair. And be fair through the way we share the news cannot be if we haven't been fair with the way we search for all these facts and news, and then share also with the public, I mean, the process that we followed. That's the fair way and the decent way and the appropriate way to be a journalist and to serve, because journalism is a public good and journalists have to serve the public. But the process, it's only one, and it goes only through that way. To be fair, but to be fair, so that we can be fair, that means that we have already selected the fact that we need, so that we can, make a conclusion in the end.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the exciting things, we're gonna do a transition here in just a second. I'm scanning the room for the sort of transition, but we're going to have our first panel join us on the stage in just a moment. A couple more chairs are going to appear in a second, but we're excited to have this first group of panelists join us. We will step off. Jenny Lamb, one of the faculty members here at the university, will be moderating a conversation with a few individuals who are doing this work on the ground in many ways of creating platforms through technology, the opportunities to, I think, help facilitate these interactions and these conversations. And then for those few hands that raised your hands as aspiring journalists, but for so many of you, these are the spaces, the conversations that we have to have around how do we utilize the systems and the resources that we do have. As Emma Restrepo will speak about, I think, a little bit of some of the wonderful work that she has been doing in the Philadelphia area of engaging people to be journalistic who, in fact, are not necessarily narrowly trained journalists, right? People in hair salons and other places, if I'm remembering this correctly, Emma, right? So for so many of you, as we think about being part of places and communities, this is where it's really essential I think to hear these examples very powerfully. So without kind of further delay, let me invite the rest of those panelists to come. We'll get the chairs here switched. So hang tight. There is not too much song and dance. We will step up, but thank you for joining us this morning. Oh, yeah. Dramatic effect, don't worry about it, it's fine. We are team players here, so it works out. But thank you for joining us for this first session. We will have, oh, look at this, spoke it into existence. We'll have the panelists join us on the stage. We'll turn it over to Jenny and the rest of her colleagues, and there will be some space for some Q&A with all of you with them. So as you're hearing some of these things and saying, I want to ask them this question, you will in fact have that opportunity. So thank you for being here. We look forward to seeing you the rest of the day. And again, appreciate your willingness to engage in these conversations.
Thank you.